Stop buying lottery tickets. The real jackpot is rotting in your local landfill right now. People actually throw away solid gold, lost historical documents, and priceless art because they are too lazy to check what it is. We compiled 50 unbelievable times literal trash made someone incredibly wealthy. Prepare to severely regret cleaning out your attic. 1. Having stuffed dead animals staring at you from the corner of a living room is already a questionable interior design choice. But one woman absolutely hit the jackpot when she pulled a dusty, terrifying taxidermy bird out of a black plastic trash bag. It was not just some creepy yard crow, it was a passenger pigeon, a species that has been entirely extinct for over a century. Science museums essentially got into a bidding war, throwing massive checks at her, just to own a perfectly preserved piece of dead nature. 2. We totally underappreciate janitors. They deal with our absolute worst garbage, but one cleaner almost committed the ultimate musical sin. While emptying bins, he chucked a heavy cardboard box of old reel-to-reel audio tapes straight into the dumpster. Luckily, his gut told him to fish it back out. Those tapes contained completely unreleased, never-before-heard recording sessions from the Beatles. The guy was literal seconds away from burying John, Paul, George, and Ringo under a mountain of soggy coffee grounds and half-eaten tuna sandwiches. 3. Buying a blind storage unit is basically just paying good money to inherit someone else's dirty mattresses. However, one brave guy threw down $500 for a locker packed with absolute junk and a ridiculously heavy metal safe. After practically destroying his back trying to force the rusted door open, he discovered $7.5 million in cold, hard cash. Seriously, $7.5 million. While the rest of us are finding expired coupons in our couch cushions, this guy literally bought a winning lottery ticket disguised as garbage. 4. Universities employ the smartest people on Earth, yet they routinely throw away priceless history simply because it lacks a digital screen. A night shift janitor was clearing out the physics department when he spotted a long, dusty brass tube sitting squarely in the trash. It was an original, fully functioning 18th century astronomical telescope. Modern academics actually looked at an irreplaceable scientific treasure and decided it belonged in a landfill. Good thing the guy taking out the trash was significantly smarter than the professors who threw it there. 5. If you want to own a piece of literal Hollywood magic, skip the fancy auctions and head straight for the recycling bins. An eagle-eyed antique hunter rescued a heavy box of obsolete glass projector slides from the trash and casually held one up to the sun. He nearly dropped it. They were unreleased, incredibly rare behind-the-scenes photographs from the set of The Wizard of Oz. The dude pulled pure, historic cinematic gold directly out of the garbage juice. Frankly, I am just furious it did not happen to me. 6. Scrap metal yards are basically just endless oceans of rusted car parts and incoming tetanus infections. But a genuinely bizarre, heavy mechanical box caught one worker's attention mere seconds before it got crushed into a metal pancake. It turned out to be a real World War II Enigma machine used by the German military to send top-secret codes. Somebody actually tossed global military history right alongside their empty soup cans and broken lawnmowers. Private collectors happily threw completely insane amounts of cash at the guy who saved it. 7. Corporate trash cans are apparently hiding the origins of modern pop culture. A bored teenager was kicking around a damp box of discarded office paperwork in a commercial dumpster and stumbled upon a canceled bank check. It was made out to DC Comics for exactly $130. That specific check was used to purchase the absolute rights to Superman back in 1938. Someone looked at the birth certificate of the greatest superhero ever created and said, "Yeah, toss it." It is now a priceless museum centerpiece. 8. Remodeling an old house usually just results in breathing toxic dust and finding dead rats in the walls. A tired contractor was ripping down some plaster when he almost chucked a folded, crumpled yellow paper straight into the skip. By pure luck, he stopped to read the weirdly fancy handwriting. It was a massively rare original copy of the Declaration of Independence. That dusty piece of hidden construction scrap ended up fetching millions of dollars at auction. You might want to check your own walls before you grab the sledgehammer. 9. Prowling neighborhood estate cleanouts is an absolute goldmine for hoarders looking for free stuff. One guy casually grabbed a remarkably ugly, dusty rug from a curb pile and threw it on his living room floor. For years, he used it to wipe his muddy work boots. Turns out, he was aggressively disrespecting a genuinely rare Navajo chief blanket from the 1800s. Once an expert finally spotted it, that filthy footmat was quickly auctioned off for well over $1 million. Your living room decor is officially pathetic. 10. Demolishing a historic church usually leaves behind nothing but useless brick rubble and asbestos. But one opportunistic passerby decided to salvage a tremendously ugly, dirt-covered glass panel straight out of the construction dumpster. After lugging it home and scrubbing off decades of grime, an appraiser identified it as an original Tiffany-stained glass masterpiece. The demolition crew literally threw away world-class, irreplaceable art. That heavy pile of colored glass and lead instantly translated into hundreds of thousands of dollars for the guy who saved it. 11. We all know that a heavy rainstorm will utterly destroy paper sitting in a dumpster within a few hours. Luckily, a dedicated trash scavenger yanked a massive stack of thick cardboard advertisements out of a soaking wet bin just before the skies opened up. They ended up being original, highly coveted traveling circus posters from the 19th century in remarkably perfect condition. By simply saving old entertainment history from turning into wet mush, high-end collectors handed him a genuinely stupid amount of cash. Trash day is wild. 12. Who actually has the stomach to dig through the sticky recycling bins at a snobby college campus? A very smart history major, that is who. He spotted a weird, water-damaged leather journal mixed in with crushed beer cans. Opening the soggy pages, he discovered early handwritten notes by Mary Shelley for the novel Frankenstein. Are you kidding me? The global literary world threw an absolute massive fit over this discovery, and that broke college student threw all that sweet auction money straight into his previously empty bank account. 13. For decades, an urban legend claimed that Atari buried millions of unsold video games in a desert landfill back in the 80s simply because they were terrible. Everyone laughed it off as a myth, until a documentary crew showed up with massive excavators and actually dug them up. Those crushed, dirt-covered plastic cartridges became incredibly sought-after collector items literally overnight. It just proves that if you wait long enough, pure nostalgia will make full-grown adults happily empty their savings to buy literal garbage from a toxic dump. 14. Stumbling upon creepy, swirly handwriting on old yellow paper is usually a sign that you should run away. A local guy was poking around a recycling bin behind an abandoned estate when he found a thick stack of old letters. They were actually written and hand-signed by the legendary master of horror, Edgar Allan Poe. Imagine casually throwing away the intimate, terrifying thoughts of an absolute literary icon like it was junk mail. Those discarded, slightly creepy pieces of paper ended up buying the finder a brand new luxury car. 15. Walking the beach after a massive storm usually just means dodging tangled fishing lines and dead seagulls. But a guy walking his dog noticed a massive, terrible-smelling waxy boulder sitting right among the washed-up plastic bottles. It looked like a diseased sponge, but it was actually a giant chunk of ambergris. That is literal whale vomit used in ultra-high-end luxury perfumes. He dragged that foul-smelling lump of ocean garbage home and sold it to an overseas buyer for over $300,000. Literal vomit pays. 16. Wandering into abandoned, collapsed mines is generally just a fantastic way to fall down a dark hole and break your legs. However, one dedicated denim hunter dug deep through a century-old underground trash pit and unearthed a pair of stiff, incredibly filthy jeans. They were original Levi Strauss pants from the 1880s. Apparently, rich modern hipsters are more than willing to pay extremely heavy premiums just to wear the unwashed clothes of dead gold miners. He struck pure, undeniable gold in the dirt, and he did not even need a pickaxe. 17. When you strip away the magic, animation cells are literally just painted pieces of cheap plastic. A major studio janitor was directly ordered by clueless management to throw out heavy boxes filled with old, outdated cartoon drawings. He decided to keep a few just because they looked decent. they turned out to be original hand-painted cells from the movie Snow White. The corporate executives carelessly tossed out their own priceless legacy, allowing that lucky cleaner to retire early on their jaw-dropping, multi-million-dollar mistake. Absolute poetic justice. 18. Let us be completely real. Most old books smell absolutely terrible and hold zero actual financial value. But somebody entirely out of their mind dumped a huge, incredibly dusty book right into a French library's designated trash pile. Luckily, a very sharp librarian rescued it just before the garbage trucks arrived. It was a genuine first folio of Shakespeare from the 1600s. The absolute holy grail of English literature was chilling next to discarded banana peels and crumpled coffee cups. Whoever threw that away belongs in a straitjacket. 19. Dragging ugly, broken furniture out of a sketchy alleyway occasionally comes with some massive, life-altering perks. A local clockmaker salvaged a completely busted grandfather clock from the garbage. While he was busy repairing the wooden case, a hidden back panel suddenly popped wide open. It was stuffed entirely to the brim with incredibly heavy, antique gold coins. He literally adopted a dead rich guy's secret emergency fund just by picking up some street trash. That is definitely one highly effective way to make sure you always have the time and the money. 20. Buying a stained, horrible-smelling couch from a thrift store dumpster pile is usually a highly desperate move. A broke college student was vacuuming decades of mysterious crumbs out of the cushions when he heard a heavy metallic clunk. It was a vintage 1960s Rolex Daytona watch, heavily scratched but perfectly ticking. Some rich guy probably lost it during a wild party 50 years ago, and his clueless kids just threw the whole couch away. That crusty cushion surprise paid off his entire student loan debt instantly. 21. Yanking random rusted pieces of metal out of a public yard waste bin is usually just a fantastic way to secure a tetanus infection. A brave scrapper ignored the obvious danger and threw a heavy, muddy metal rod into the back of his truck. An appraiser later wiped off the thick grime and revealed a beautifully crafted, highly authentic Civil War officer sword. That dangerous piece of rusty yard trash ended up selling for enough cash to pay off the scrapper's entire residential mortgage. Not a bad haul for a Tuesday morning. 22. Modern art deeply confuses absolutely everyone, and this story proves it. A retired truck driver bought an exceptionally ugly, paint-splattered canvas out of a thrift shop trash pile for $5, fully intending to use it as a basement dartboard. Right before she ruined it, an art teacher pointed out it was actually an original Jackson Pollock painting worth several $1,000,000. She accidentally rescued a world-class museum masterpiece from becoming Friday night dart practice. Just remember that next time you look at hideous garbage at a garage sale. 23. City dumps are notoriously fully packed with rotting food, broken televisions, and a whole lot of sadness. But one guy digging through the disgusting muck found a massive, incredibly heavy bronze bell sitting right in the middle of the mess. It turned out to be the original cast iron bell from a highly famous, sunken 19th century steamship. Maritime museums literally fought each other viciously at auction just to acquire it. It went straight from a stinking, toxic landfill directly into a pristine, climate-controlled glass display case. 24. Your expensive living room houseplants honestly deserve way better pots than this. A guy grabbed a really ugly, lumpy ceramic jug from a neighborhood curb pile, planning to use it as a cheap dirt planter. Weeks later, he finally noticed a very distinct, creepy face carved deeply into the clay. It was a massively rare 19th century face jug crafted by enslaved American artisans. Elite collectors go absolutely crazy for these things. His cheap, garbage-picked flower pot turned out to be an invaluable historical artifact worth an absolute fortune. 25. Dirty dive bars throw out the absolute grossest, most sticky junk imaginable during their rare renovations. A bar regular decided to keep an incredibly ugly, tarnished old beer tap handle from the dumpster simply because it felt unusually heavy in his hand. After taking some aggressive polish to it, he realized it was made of solid sterling silver, salvaged from a pre-prohibition luxury hotel. He literally found a massive chunk of pure, historic wealth sitting right next to broken beer bottles and cigarette butts. Now that is something worth drinking to. 26. Voluntarily opening a medical waste bin is a brilliant way to invite absolute nightmares into your life. A brave clinic janitor was throwing out trash when she found a small wooden box containing some seriously unsettling old teeth. They were antique ivory dentures heavily fitted with solid gold from the 1800s. Apparently, bizarre medical oddities sell for completely absurd prices to weird, wealthy collectors. She literally sold a dead person's fake teeth to pay her rent for the entire year. That is both highly disgusting and deeply inspiring. 27. A private chauffeur was doing a deep clean out of a luxury car when he found a severely broken pair of round sunglasses left behind on the floorboards. He almost tossed them directly into the garbage, but remembered they actually belonged to his passenger, John Lennon. He held on to that broken, seemingly useless piece of twisted wire and glass in a desk drawer for several decades. Those exact broken shades eventually auctioned off for almost 200 grand. Never throw away broken sunglasses if a wildly famous musician happened to sit on them. 28. Scrap paper is nothing more than scrap paper, right up until the exact moment it makes you incredibly rich. A local jazz musician was taking out the trash and spotted some bizarre-looking sheet music rotting in a dumpster behind an old theater. It was not garbage, it was an original, handwritten musical score by Ludwig van Beethoven himself. Some completely clueless theater employee used the genius, historical work of a classical master as literal trash. The guy who rescued those scribbled notes practically never had to work a day in his life again. 29. Digging through street trash in the middle of New York City is an incredibly bold lifestyle choice that usually ends in deep regret. But someone found a ratty box of old records on the sidewalk and bought a weird, completely unlabeled acetate disc for exactly 75 cents. It turned out to be the unreleased original first recording of the legendary rock band, the Velvet Underground. He flipped a piece of dirty, scratched-up plastic for well over 25 grand. Suddenly, touching New York street garbage does not sound quite so terrible. 30. Excavating an old, toxic city dump usually just kicks up dangerous dust and broken glass. A backhoe operator hit something solid in the dirt and unearthed a sealed wooden crate completely wrapped in heavy, rotting tarps. It was not a dead body. It was a perfectly preserved case of pre-Prohibition-era bourbon. Smugglers likely buried it deep to hide from the cops and just never came back. High-end whiskey collectors happily paid an absolute fortune just to drink that century-old, highly illegal dump juice. 31. If you ever see a weird metal dome sticking out of the coastal mud, absolutely do not ignore it. A dedicated beachcomber digging near a seaside town dump unearthed an incredibly heavy, original 19th century brass deep-sea diving helmet. It looked like something straight out of a terrifying steampunk nightmare. High-end coastal decorators will happily pay completely ridiculous amounts of cash just to put authentic nautical gear in rich people's living rooms. He washed the stinking mud off that heavy metal dome and cleaned up his bank account very nicely. 32. Letting your mom clean out your childhood bedroom is a tremendously dangerous game to play. One mother ruthlessly threw her grown son's old, dusty binder of trading cards straight into the garbage can. He physically dove into the trash to rescue it, and thank goodness he did. It contained a pristine first edition Shadowless Charizard card. A single piece of shiny children's cardboard that his mom thought was useless clutter ended up paying for his entire college tuition years later. Keep your parents far away from your vintage nerd stuff, folks. 33. A guitar without strings just looks like a sad, empty piece of firewood to most people. A musician walking home late at night found a dusty, scuffed-up acoustic guitar leaning precariously against a smelly alley dumpster. Upon closer inspection, it was a highly coveted pre-war Martin model. Serious acoustic players consider those specific vintage instruments to be the absolute pinnacle of musical sound. He took it home, wiped off the dumpster juice, slapped some fresh strings on it, and flipped it for enough cash to buy a highly reliable used car. 34. Who in their right mind keeps random, rusty iron keys they find buried in the dirt? A brave urban explorer found a massive, incredibly heavy key near the ruins of a demolished building. It was not for an old shed. It was an original skeleton key to a notorious, historical prison cell that housed absolute monsters. Macabre true crime enthusiasts are notoriously weird, and they gladly pay extremely hefty premiums for this extremely dark, creepy stuff. Finding rust in the dirt led to the ultimate spooky payday for this incredibly lucky guy. 35. Looking for some cheap firewood to stay warm? A guy aggressively clearing out his grandparents' messy garage nearly tossed a dusty old violin straight into a blazing backyard incinerator. It is a really good thing he decided to skip the musical bonfire that day. Professional appraisers quickly recognized the delicate wooden instrument as a genuine Stradivarius. Turning a multi-million-dollar historical masterpiece into fuel for roasting s'mores would have been the ultimate financial tragedy of the century. Always double-check your kindling before you strike the match. 36. Scrap metal dealers will happily buy absolutely anything if it is heavy enough to melt down. A guy bought a weird, gold-colored metal egg at a flea market junk pile for 14 bucks, entirely hoping to melt it down for a quick scrap profit. The scrap yard almost threw it directly into the blazing furnace. It turned out to be a lost, original Fabergé egg made exclusively for Russian royalty. He was literal inches away from permanently destroying a $30 million masterpiece just to make 20 bucks. Pure insanity. 37. Using a filthy, discarded ceramic bowl as an everyday ashtray is quite the bold aesthetic vibe. A heavy smoker pulled a nice-looking bowl from a neighborhood curb alert and aggressively stubbed his cigarettes out in it for several years. Turns out, he was actively defacing a hyper-rare Ming Dynasty antique from China. After finally getting it appraised, his disgusting, tar-stained ash catcher sold for enough money to literally buy a massive house. They always say that smoking kills, but in this highly specific case, this guy absolutely won life. 38. Let us be completely fair. Garage sale junk boxes are mostly just filled with broken glass, rusty nails, and deep regrets. But one guy threw down $45 for some dusty, weird-looking glass plates that he thought looked somewhat interesting. They were not trash. They were actually lost. Original photographic negatives taken by the legendary nature photographer Ansel Adams. A handful of extremely dirty, fragile glass plates instantly bought this random guy a ridiculously wealthy new lifestyle. Garage sailing is basically just legally robbing people who do not know better. 39. Picking up curb alerts is usually just a fantastic way to infest your entire house with angry bedbugs. A broke college student found a really bizarre, angular wooden chair sitting on the street and dragged it home to use at his cheap desk. It turned out to be a highly valuable custom piece designed by the legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright. The previous wealthy owners just thought it was really ugly junk taking up space. That awful interior design choice ended up costing them a massively heavy six-figure payout. 40. Who actually knew that dirty old hippie memorabilia could buy you premium real estate? A dedicated dumpster diver was digging through a wet, nasty alleyway and found a thick stack of vibrant psychedelic posters. They were incredibly rare, original test printing proofs for the 1969 Woodstock Music Festival. He managed to save legendary music history from the freezing rain and the aggressive city rats, and in return, he earned enough cold hard cash to outright buy a whole entire house. Peace, love, and massive capital gains, baby. 41. Cleaning out an estate after someone passes away is always completely brutal work. Somebody recklessly threw a whole heavy box of old sporting goods straight into a neighborhood dumpster. A neighbor kid grabbed a scuffed-up baseball from the pile just so his golden retriever could chew on it. Luckily, the dad grabbed it first and noticed the faded ink. It was hand-signed by the legendary Babe Ruth. The family dog was literal seconds away from aggressively eating a piece of sports history worth well over $100 grand. 42. Commercial tech recycling centers usually just process endless mountains of completely useless, sticky plastic keyboards. But workers at a facility in Silicon Valley popped open a casually donated box of junk and found the absolute nerd holy grail. It was an original Apple I computer, hand-soldered by Steve Wozniak himself in the 1970s. It eventually auctioned for well over $200 grand. Do not get too excited though, because I promise you that your dusty old laptop from college is definitely still completely worthless. 43. Clueless estate liquidators will absolutely toss out thick 3-ring binders without a single second thought. One incredibly lucky guy checked a commercial recycling bin and managed to save an authentic, heavily used flight plan manual from the Apollo 11 moon landing. It even had handwritten notes in the margins. Throwing away the actual, literal instructions for putting human beings on the surface of the moon is a totally unprecedented level of historical stupidity. Thankfully, one man's trash dive saved a massive piece of space race history from the paper shredder. 44. Desperately needs some quick kindling for a backyard weekend barbecue? A dad found a bizarre, heavily carved wooden stick laying near a park dumpster and actively raised his heavy axe to chop it into pieces. Luckily, a very smart neighbor ran over and stopped him just in the nick of time. It was a wildly rare ceremonial war club originating from a historic native tribe. He wisely chose to sell it to a museum for a massive fortune, instead of using a priceless artifact to grill up a cheap pack of hot dogs. 45. Normal paper absolutely does not survive water, but amazingly, it can sometimes survive the brutal city trash cycle. A bored garbage collector simply liked the elegant look of some old paper menus and snatched them from the hopper before the crusher ruined them. They turned out to be authentic, highly coveted dinner menus recovered from the Titanic. He somehow managed to keep a deeply morbid piece of doomed, sunken ocean luxury completely safe from being obliterated by the hydraulic press of a garbage truck. That is a seriously massive historical rescue. 46. Emptying out a totally failed retail business usually means throwing away thousands of pounds of completely useless plastic garbage. A stressed-out property manager aggressively tossed heavy boxes of unsold video games into a skip, completely missing a factory-sealed copy of Stadium Events for the original Nintendo. That specific super rare game is legendary among serious retro collectors. That single piece of discarded plastic cartridge ended up paying out tens of thousands of dollars to the guy who found it. It was pure, highly pixelated gold sitting in a filthy dumpster. 47. Randomly poking around a dangerously collapsing wooden barn is generally just a fantastic way to find angry snakes and rusty nails. A woman was digging through the debris and found a beautifully tooled leather saddle buried deep under a pile of discarded horseshoes instead. It featured heavy silver conchos and traced directly back to the legendary American outlaw, Jesse James. She literally found some of the most highly sought-after Wild West history, just rotting away under a pile of incredibly smelly hay and raccoon droppings. Absolutely unbelievable. 48. Everyone knows that random flea market jewelry is mostly just cheap plastic and fake metal that inevitably turns your skin green. A woman bought an incredibly ugly, chunky glass ring from a dirty junk bin for exactly $10 and casually wore it everywhere for years. A professional jeweler finally looked at it closely and instantly started sweating heavily. It was a flawless 26-carat diamond. She was literally wearing $500,000 to the grocery store while pushing a shopping cart with a broken wheel. Unbelievable. 49. Massive piles of rusted metal pipes sometimes hide incredibly sharp, deadly secrets. A sweaty junkyard worker was sorting scrap when he pulled a weirdly shaped heavy bar straight out of the metal heap. After wiping away the grime, he realized it was an authentic Japanese katana forged by a legendary master centuries ago. A soldier likely brought it back from war as a priceless souvenir, and his ungrateful kids just threw it away with the empty tin cans and broken mufflers. That sharp piece of trash was a massive historical jackpot. 50. Can you actually imagine being so incredibly lazy that you just casually throw away life-changing money? A guy who was literally digging through public garbage cans looking for cheap aluminum to recycle found a fully scratched-off lottery ticket sitting right on top of the trash. The original owner simply misread the printed numbers and blindly tossed it away without scanning it. That crumpled, sticky piece of literal garbage was a verified $1 million winner. In this highly specific case, one man's stinking trash literally bought him an actual luxury yacht. Look me in the eye and tell me you haven't accidentally thrown away something worth thousands just to save 5 minutes of cleaning. Drop a comment and tell everyone what priceless family heirloom you tossed out of pure ignorance. Let us all heavily judge you. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so I can keep reminding you of your terrible life choices.